Thank you so much for your time, Kia.
Of course. Thank
I wanted to ask you because like it's the beginning of the new year. Are you someone who holds any value to the new year, any rituals or fresh energy or stuff like that?
Yeah, 100%. I'm not like as great as I used to be with like being consistent with it, but like, and then I also believe that like technically the new year is in the spring, not really like
Yes.
this Gregorian,
I agree.
Gregory,
I
like the
agree.
Gregorian. But since that is collectively how the Western world operates, I believe that there's some truth to it too. Like
Hmm.
even if it's not the traditional ritual, because everyone does it, we do. There is some energy there. So like, at the very least, I'll do. In America, Black people have this tradition. Black Americans have a tradition of like eating certain foods on New Year's Day or on New Year's Eve and cleaning up your house. I feel like
Hmm.
a lot of people clean up their house, clear the space, but we'll eat like cornbread and black eyed peas and collard greens for
Uh-huh.
good luck. So, and Hoppin' John, there has to be like a pork or a hog element to it. And this year, normally traditionally you'll like smoke a ham or like put ham hocks in your greens and let it cook for a long time.
Hmm.
I didn't have time for that. I just got some pancetta from the grocery
I hear
store
you.
and had that, and it was good. So yeah, that's my ritual. But I have been thinking about that, like, ideally, I'm the type of girl that is on top of all my rituals,
Mm.
and they're deep set rituals, and they're a mix of deeply personal ones slash deeply reverent. That's my goal.
Yes.
We're not there yet,
No, no,
but yeah.
no. It's a process. Did you have like it's also weird talking to you in a sense of like that you're already in the process of the next you and that we're now talking about maybe someone that you maybe not can really identify with anymore, but we can discuss that with Hook's Law.
Let's do it.
Did you have any rituals during Hook's Law that you wanted to stick to or maybe started with and then diverted from a little bit?
Hook's law was me. I have fell off the wagon,
Mm.
girl. Sorry, what are your pronouns? Do you, she, her? What is
She,
it?
hers, perfect.
Okay. Yeah, girl, I fell off the wagon during Hook's law. It was no rituals. Hook's law was like, dear God, I got to get myself out of this hole. What did I used to do again? I used to light a candle. I used to, talk to. What did I used to do? Maybe I'll try to start. That's what the making of that was. But that being said, like I definitely like, I love lighting candles and I love candlelight. And like even though I'm not always great with doing like specific candle magic, I'll just always have a candle lit, which I think is like probably one of my rituals. It's just always having fire burning, always burning a thing. Um, and I had like a couple cards up in my space. Like cartomancy is something that I'm not like. I used to be really into like tarot reading and tarot cards,
Hmm.
and now I'm kind of more into like playing card divination because it's more closer to like what my least distant ancestors did. It's like more of
Uh-huh.
a hoodoo tradition, um and I feel like cartomancy is something that if I put more effort into, I could be really good at, because when I'm not putting that much effort, I will pull cards I will be like, oh, that was meant for me. So like one random day I pulled a couple cards and it was like B is for beautiful and W is for work. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess I need to put those up in my space. Yeah, like shit like that will just happen without me
Yes.
trying very hard. So that was the closest thing to a ritual, was me noticing when something divinatory would occur, and then me like with the little bit of wherewithal I had during that process,
Yeah.
being like, I'll stick this on the wall so I can see it when I
Yeah.
look up, kind of thing.
So,
Yeah.
what do you think it says that you, as a person who holds a lot of love and respect for certain rituals, to make such a body of work, you not being connected to your rituals?
If the biggest thing that I think it taught me is like, the classic saying, you could take the girl out the country, but you can't take the country out the girl. It's like I feel like like spiritually, there's nothing I can do to escape it. This is just
Mm.
like
Mm.
my place on earth. Like this is my role on earth. This is the spirits have me. I am a conduit. Um, and I also just, even though maybe not everyone regards it as a ritual. I realized, like, life is a series of us iterating through repeating and failing. And that in and of itself is a ritual, and like just the loops and the spirals of it all. I just I'm like, I am a ritual. I know that makes no sense. But
No, it
just like
makes
the feeling,
complete, yeah. It's completely sense.
Yeah.
Like life is a rhythm and a flow,
Yeah.
basically. And things come back and things disappear and then they come back to it's like this constant push and pull. I completely understand that. I think
Yeah.
the difficult part is being in the middle of the push and pull. And like sometimes
Yes.
when you're out of it, you can recognize it, but when you're in it,
Yeah.
it can feel very endless. Um, and that's another thing that I wanted to talk to you about. Milk Thought, your beautiful performance art piece. Is that what I can call it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that was a piece that you made during the album process of Hook's Law, right?
They happen at the same time. I think ultimately Milk Thought inspired Hook's Law, the album product that is being sold in stores right now. Um, but like what Milk Thought became was kind of like the summation of me being like, hey, with my live performance, I wanted to be on some performance art shit. I don't want to just do a regular live show. That ultimately is like what I was getting at before I started even writing an album or making that play. And basically, like, because of like the profile that I had built off the backs of my first album, I was in, one foot in like art world spaces and one foot in pop music world spaces. And the art world, like, especially now, everyone's desperate to prove that they don't hate black artists, especially poor black artists, and they'll kind of like, come on in and do whatever the fuck you want to do, sure, and like, so I was able to take advantage of some of those people that just were looking at me in good faith because they just wanted a thing like this in their space. And I think just at the time, because I was trying to make sense of my career, I didn't want to rush an album out. I wanted space to develop. I just wanted to develop. I was like, oh, I'm a real artist now. Well, let's review the notes before we just go back out, and but this is just that's not the reality of the landscape we're in now.
Mm-hmm.
What I really needed was like, people to be like, here's a bunch of money and figure it out. And
Mm-hmm.
instead I was like, okay, I'll just use my gigs to try to figure this shit out. And eventually, someone was like, hey, there's a program in your hometown for artists like you that are trying to figure this shit out. You should apply for it. So then it became Milk Thought and then the album.
Right.
Um, yeah, if I could do it all again, I would make my album first and then put the play out instead of the other way. But I'm
Oh,
grateful for how it all came out. Yeah, yeah,
and why is
yeah.
that?
I think that I think that as much as I love experimentation and as much as we love to like reject the status quo, and that even goes down to like traditional song form, I think I at my core I am a musician first, and
Mm.
I love music, and my storytelling comes from the way I perform it on the record we hear in our ears, and then how I perform it out. And I think I was letting stage performance dictate how I wrote the song,
Mm-hmm.
which just feels like out of order for me personally without having much language to explain it. And then also, I think I think in terms of like energetically starting up an era, it makes sense to be like, here's the music, now come see the play.
Uh-huh.
And like I'm glad that like everything happened for a reason, because especially with where I was at mentally and physically, I needed that physical embodiment push to get me back into Hook's Law mode. So
Right.
for me personally, it happened how it's supposed to happen. But
Feeling, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. I that makes total sense. It's also funny that you said that you wouldn't do it that way because people like to go against the status quo. Because I was about to say like, oh, I love the fact that you created a new path for yourself and diverted from the status quo. But then at the same time,
thank you.
but then at the same time, I also understand the feeling you just described because sometimes you feel like you have to go against the status quo just for the sake of it.
Right, right, right. Yeah,
Yeah. So I
and then you
completely.
wind up kind of like, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No, 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 no. You go ahead.
Yeah, you just kind of wind up like shooting yourself in the foot is dramatic. Sometimes it's along the lines of self sabotage,
Hmm.
but it's like Yeah, and I think especially because of, my marginalization, our marginalization, we wind up kind of like, yeah, rejecting status quoing ourselves into a corner, and there's just like, there's still money to be made, there's still life to live, and like, like I deserve that, we deserve a path of like least resistance. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like we,
Like,
because we already have a path.
but I think
Yeah.
that perfectly ties into what you've said in multiple interviews. The album is about, which is self love and learning how to be soft instead of like going into what I think is like um our how do you say that, our um factory setting of like always
Hmm.
wanting to fight and do the hard thing, and instead of just like, relax, which has been one of the hardest things I've been trying to tackle in my life
Really,
recently. Yeah.
bless you. I totally relate. I totally relate to that. Um, in every way.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to begin.
How
Yeah.
has your definition of self-love maybe changed or stayed the same with Hooke's Law?
It changed a lot. I mean, I will say that a lot of the concepts that like I embodied in Hook's Law were not new to me. It's things that, you know, especially if like you are concerned with black feminisms or concerned with like your marginalization, you're gonna get, you know, Audre Lorde, June Jordan, like they're all gonna get in your face. Like you're gonna get the readings presented to you pretty quickly. You know what I mean? If
Mm-hmm.
if if you're concerned with your marginalization, the readings are there. Especially now, the free PDF is on Twitter. You don't even have to
Mm-hmm.
look that hard to find it. It's being shoved down your throat constantly. At the bare minimum, there's bell hooks
Mm-hmm.
right there at your fingertip. So it's like those concepts weren't new to me. In fact, they were like so common to me that I almost ignored them because it's so easy because they're just so right there at front facing. Does that make
Yeah, that makes
it was
sense.
like easy to not actually read the thing because it's right there in your face. So I was coming into Hook's Law with these notions of self love that were like, self love is a journey, not a destination, and
Yeah.
or like,
Yeah. All the
um,
things everybody says.
all the things everybody says. Um, but I still, at the end of the day, was like, I don't like myself,
Mm.
and I don't feel inspired to take care of myself because I don't like myself. You know, and when I make a mistake, I dislike myself even more. You know what I mean? Like, how do you actually like a version of yourself that fucks up? How do I like myself if other people don't like me? How am I supposed to believe that if other people don't do it? And that was like, when I realized that that was how I really felt,
Mm-hmm.
it was devastating.
Mm-hmm.
It was devastating where I was like, there's no way to teach this. There's no way to teach this. I just have to decide too. I just have to decide
I
that who I am is lovable. You can't teach that.
Nope. And I think I now, but please correct me if I'm wrong, if I understand what you just said about all the literature that is on your path, because sometimes you can really like theorize everything that happens in your life. And I think for instance, if I look at my own life, I think I've convinced myself in like a theoretical way that
Mm-hmm.
I loved myself. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
here, but not really in like really in your body, feeling
Yeah,
it, being it, like that what you just said. And that is something that you can't learn from a book. That is something that you have to experience and
you
choose,
have.
like you just said.
Yeah, you have to choose it every day.
Hmm.
You have to like keep choosing it. I agree with you. Like what you said is so profound because yeah, it especially when you do the readings and you understand the readings and you're like, yeah, I tore that. Like I tore that. Now I know how to love myself and I know for a fact exactly. I know I do because I just read it.
Hmm.
I tore that. And like it's like in all the small decision and big decisions and small decisions, and that's the hardest thing. And I think the aunties, I love all my aunties, all my literature aunties, but the aunties, if they do talk about it, it's being coded. It's hard to see. You know what I mean? Like that's not in the summaries that they're telling us.
Hmm.
You know, and that's why I'm grateful. To take in like there's this podcast my friend put me on to called Our Ancestors Were Messy. I really
Ooh,
love that podcast. I highly recommend it.
I'm gonna
It just
write
tells
that
you
down
all
right
these
away.
story. Yeah, listen to that. I just listened to the two-part episode about Zora Neale Hurston and Langston Hughes' friendship and falling out,
Oh,
and it's so good, and it's like it's so good for so many ways because it's important to know our ancestors were human and messy, but
yes.
then it's also like they dealt with, you know, in the 20s the same shit we're dealing with now
Yes.
in the exact same way,
Yeah.
and it's just like yeah, those type of things are really vindicating and like help with that.
Yes, 100%. I'm currently reading, I forgot the name of the book, but it's like from Alice Walker and it's like an accumulation of all her diaries and just
Mm,
getting a look into her life and seeing how messy and that she also was like jealous of some of her peers or stuff like that.
mm-hmm,
And like she also talks about Zora Neale Hurston and
mm.
I'm halfway through. It's very interesting to read because I feel the same way. Like sometimes she says things in her diary and I'm like, shit, I feel the same way. And I feel so seen. And then I understand like you don't have to be perfect when it comes to like loving yourself, for instance.
Yeah,
You said self love is in the little things. Looking back on Hook's Law, what are some self love moments throughout the album that you really, really like or change the way you make music?
I love this question. Okay, I'm gonna. I think what'll help is if I need to pull up the track list
Of
because then I
course.
can be like,
Of
okay,
course.
track one. Oh, this is cute. It's not. It's beyond cute, but you know, I like how I feel right now with this
Yes.
like
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that.
warm and fuzzy inside.
Oh, I love
Um,
to hear that. Thank you.
and you know, Alice Walker comes up on this episode I'm talking about because
Really?
Alice Walker was one of the people that woke up Zora Neale Hurston for us. Like
I
she
know.
and I didn't know that, you know, and I'm just like that's another thing that poured into my self love bucket is like I'm not crazy for feeling like this. Like black women have to be the ones to tell us about other black women. You know, just even realizing that. I don't know if
Hmm.
that makes sense, but like
It
that
does.
was a lot for me foundational where I'm like, oh, this is the landscape we're under,
I also think
right?
for you as an artist, you're going to love this book because in this book,
Mm-hmm.
you also see the entire process of her doing the work, trying to let other people know
Oh,
about Zora. And it's also the process of her writing The Color Purple, again, like
right.
everything, everything. And
Super
I'm
cool.
halfway through. I'm going to look up the title, but um,
Is it Gather Blossoms Under Fire?
yes,
Gathering Blossoms? Okay.
yes, that's
Sorry,
the one.
I just Googled it.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, I got it. Um, okay, I hate excuse me.
That's okay.
I hate you. Okay, that was a big self love moment for me because something that is like and I wonder if you relate to this, but I feel like in marginalized communities, sometimes we can be even more of a stickler about like financial your financial hygiene, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like it's like shame based. Like you know, me and my family, we are not fucking Fortune 500
Oh,
financial experts like that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But they're so hard on me about my financial fuck ups. You know, even though it's like, hey, none of us go to business school. We barely know how to balance our checkbooks around this house. Like
Hmm.
we're all figuring it out.
Hmm.
But they're just really they have such high standards for me. So the idea of like being late on your rent, how dare you? Let
Yes.
alone us getting to a conversation about exploitation and living as a human right and da, da, da. So making this anthem about how much I hate my landlord, even though I know I wasn't a perfect tenant, I wasn't a shitty tenant. Okay, I was a decent tenant. Well, I'm really telling my business out here. See, even this, like saying I doesn't tell, like my family is like,
Yeah,
like,
I understand what
geez.
you're saying. I understand what you're saying. And I think I saw a clip the other day of someone who said it was like a podcast clip of someone who said that black excellence feels classist. And
It
maybe
absolutely is.
that ties into what you're saying right now that when you are a marginalized person, you have to be a perfect person because there's no room
Mhm.
to be imperfect, basically.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I hate you was free for me to feel because I was like, you know, I had told myself my whole life, like you know, if I make any mistakes as a tenant, I have absolutely no right
Hmm.
to demand rights.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
so that was a big thing. You know, stupid prices. I feel like that's obvious. Take it, and think about it, and kiss. And motions are all songs where there were big steps in me, like just reclaiming my sexuality and
Hmm.
horniness And it was like kind of like a double or maybe even a triple battle, you know, because I'm a fat black woman, so there's the mammification, and I think darker skinned black women get mammified regardless of their size, but the size, my size compounding that, and then my sexual trauma from my childhood. So it's just like on a personal level, I'm just like, oh, like there's still a little girl and a teenager in my
Mm-hmm.
brain that's like, what? You know, like basically every time sex comes up, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh yeah, and like not to be weird, because no, there's not a little girl present when I'm having sex, but you know, these like inclinations and desires, I have to constantly remind my little girl and my teenage self and my early 20s self, like, hey, we're learning some things. You know, we're
Mm-hmm.
getting empowered. We have agency here. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we can, you know. And then me as a human being, learning that like I wouldn't necessarily call myself a sapiosexual,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm actually like a really sexual person, where I'm like, oh, like I actually got turned out when I was really young. You know, like even realizing that and being like, oh, like I really like sex, and it's really easy for the sex brain to turn on, and it could just be a big, you know, like a big early thing in my romantic relationships. Talking about that and being like, okay, sometimes it's cute, sometimes it's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
We're all playing around. You know, those are all big self love moments.
I
You know,
get that. What is your relationship to pleasure?
I love this question. Pleasure is a big deal
Mm-hmm.
for me, right? Because of the sex stuff, but then also because of like my relationship with pain. I feel like pain and pleasure are very much connected. And like, you know, unfortunately, like many of us, my childhood was like very traumatic, and I experienced a lot of like physical body trauma and like pain physically being inflicted onto me, but then also emotional, psychological pain, of course. And there was a period of my life where I was cutting
Mm-hmm.
when I was like a teenager. And so since I was a child, I was very much interested in the relationship with like pain and pleasure and reclamation of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like not to glorify cutting. Cutting is bad. And I definitely saw Elio Degrassi cut and was like, oh, let me try that. You know, so like super influenced by TV. Don't watch TV, kids. Don't cut yourself. That to me, especially now, because I'm like exploring kink and like having conversations about that. Now I understand like, oh, humans, there is a precedent for humans to like explore this and
Mm-hmm.
reclaim this, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And like it's something that I realized that I was doing without realizing. You know, I have a lot of tattoos. I have a lot of piercings. You know, there was one moment recently where I was about to go on a really big tour and I was really nervous. So I went and got back dermals to relieve my stress. You know?
Oh,
You know?
yes.
And it wasn't like I wasn't like, yeah, this pain is gonna clear. I was just kind of like, you know, I want to get a piercing. I want to get a piercing
Right.
so I can you know, you
It
know.
wasn't that you were in the moment being like, I'm going to do this because it's going to make me feel better. It was just an unconscious thing that happened at that moment. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
now looking back, you're like, huh.
hmm You know, it made me sort of like start to interrogate myself,
Mm-hmm.
not from you know, because I am constantly concerned with interrogation, and like you know, I think I've said this many times. Like, I'm not just telling stories for show.
Mm-mm.
Like, with my with my work, I'm not telling stories for show. I'm literally telling you guys what I'm dealing with in real time. You know, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not even like fully like, yeah, I'm departed from that version of myself who made that work, but I made the work for this version of myself now.
Yes,
You know
of
what I
course. Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
And so like
100%.
I'm like literally at this point in my life where I'm like, okay, I guess I need to explore kink and BDSM properly, you know?
Mm.
And so that's where I'm at. I'm very like it's fun, it's cool, it's a little crazy. I haven't done that much yet, but I'm like really excited. I'm really excited to be in this part of my life. It just like I'm a little concerned because I'm like I need some people who like are freaky like that to hold my hand
Of
through
course,
it.
so that you have
You know
a
what I
safe
mean?
feeling. Yeah, 100%. Of course. Yeah, because you have to feel safe in order to open yourself up and be in a situation where you're very very vulnerable. 100%. How does
Absolutely.
I don't know if you've been making music, but how does this exploration come up in your work, in your music, the way that you approach making music?
On a very basic level, like I feel so much more agency and like invigoration
Mm.
to like play and perform. I'm learning that like the sex world and the play world is like I'm like set up for that through being a performance artist already, because a lot of like I think the freedom that the average person finds in this, especially because it's so secret and hidden, is like you can just perform out and embody out, you know, embodiment again. You can embody these things that you feel like you cannot or are not allowed to embody at all. And
Hmm.
that's for everybody a part of it. I'm talking about even the white man on all fours barking like a dog. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm like, I know you're tired of being on people's necks all day and you want to embody, you know, somebody being on your neck and then you find pleasure in that.
Yes.
Like, to me, that is like, I'm just like, damn, humanity is
Interesting.
awesome. You know,
Yeah.
not interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting is
Yeah.
bad. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I want to go back to your debut album because I know I'm
Mhm.
thinking about this because you mentioned the word freedom. I know that with your debut album, there was something in you that wanted that people like a Madlib respected your production, for instance. Was there somebody that you wanted to impress with Hook's Law?
I love that question. I really wanted to impress myself.
Hmm.
I wanted, like, I really went out of my way to like try to shut out any like critical manager in my head, but in I wanted other girls like me to hear me. You know, I'm like, you know, the black girls who we do the readings, we do the things, but we still curse and still talk shit, but like love the pleasures of life, but come from the hood, but like are really alt and grimy and grungy, but still, you know, like those girls. The you know, like I was like, I know y'all are here. I see y'all on TikTok, so I know y'all out there. You know, um,
Do you feel like
but
you have you impressed yourself?
that's a funny question. Yes, but it's like now we passed that. Now I'm
Right.
like, no, now like I'm like, okay, you know, I listen back to Hook's Law and I'm like, damn, I should have, you know, damn, I should have fixed, you know, like, oh, I could, you know, or like, I could have went harder. I feel like I could go harder. That's what I'll say. I could definitely
Okay.
go harder.
So, and I'm asking that question because I feel like listening to you now and the way that you're talking about freedom, it sounds like you're saying you could have been more free even
A
on
hundred
Hook's Law.
percent.
Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, if we didn't live in a world where, you know, the album cycle is now 1 year, I would have maybe taken another year on Hook's Law. You know,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
to me, Hook's Law sounds like a mixtape of demos, of like really, really, really strong ideas at various stages of development. I'm talking shit about my album. I'm still in the album rollout cycle.
Yeah.
My album just released.
No, 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 no. It doesn't feel like talking shit at all. It's like for me as an outsider being I'm not a musician, what
Mhm.
people call their projects doesn't really matter to me. Like
Yeah,
sometimes I listen to something and people say like it's a mixtape and I'm like, okay. Like I don't
right.
so I find that very interesting that is because that is something that I hear artists talking about a lot. Like a couple months ago, I talked to Mick Jenkins and he said like, actually, this is a mixtape, but has to be an album. And I honestly feel like, okay, who cares
Who
what it's
cares?
called? Do you
I
care?
know. Personally, I don't care, but
Mm-hmm.
I do understand the distinctions, and I
Mm,
understand, you know, a lot of these CD, album, extended play, LP come from various stages of the music industry over time, and a lot of these, some of these terms are even outdated, or they just reflect an industry that like no longer exists, and then we still run with it. You know, at the end of the day, you're putting out a project
right.
as an artist, but I do personally think the distinctions are important for the process of like how we know the difference between a painting and a sculpture. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Like,
Yes.
you know, like I consider Hook's Law a mixtape because I made it in the box on my computer and recorded it at home. And yes, I brought in some additional horns, but like I didn't make it in a studio. It's not a studio album. You know, like so I understand the distinction. Like I'm okay with an album being considered like a studio record, even if that studio is in a barn
Mm-hmm.
attached to your house, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily, at I was about to say LaFace Records. I'm like, LaFace don't even exist anymore. Even if it's, Columbia Records,
Yes.
what's the big three, whatever, so like, but or like an EP, to me an EP is a mini album,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but a mixtape can be any length, you
Right.
know.
Right.
Um
Does it
and
also
I
have
think I
something to do with energy? The type of energy that you make it with?
absolutely.
Right. Okay. I get you.
That's a great point. Because I'm also thinking about mixtape in the context of like black music. Like
Mm-hmm.
a mixtape is like a rapper or a singer just getting their shit off. A lot of the time it's over other classic beats. And it's like just like a compilation of you spitting over classic beats. Kind of thing. And I'm like, that spirit. First of all, that legacy we should never forget.
Right.
But also I believe that we should honor that. So actually,
Right.
I feel Mick
Yeah.
Jenkins, but
So
yeah.
yeah, now that you say it that way, actually maybe what it is that we're talking about is that maybe we should go harder on those distinctions then. That it actually says more about the fact that we don't really feel the difference between any of it anymore. And that might
Hmm.
be the problem. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. I
I
understand.
guess, but I think there were inherent problems in those distinctions before, and that's why we had to do away with them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I think there were directly class and race problems built into these distinctions, right? Because as we're talking about this is why I love talking about shit. It's like I agree with you, but then as we're talking about it, who's to say that a rapper making a mixtape is like less valuable or less quantifiable
Mm-hmm.
energetically
Mm-hmm.
than Beck and his horns and guitars in the studio in LA over 3 years. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like,
Yes.
and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
who's to decide? So there was an issue with those distinctions to begin with. That's why they fell apart. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
100. I agree. Hooke's law essentially means a downward spiral in a loaded spring. And I was wondering, but maybe you kind of like answered it in the beginning already, but where in that spiral are you right now? Are you being pulled down or are you being launched? Are you somewhere else?
I was already launched when I was launched when I turned the masters in
Hmm.
to my label. I think that's when, because like what you guys see is like halfway through. Like the rollout starts when we start making the videos and making the da da da. That's when it starts for me.
Mm-hmm.
And when we start dropping the singles, that's kind of like phase 2 of the rollout, where it's like, oh shit, now it's public facing. So where I am at is I've been launched, and I guess I'm maybe I landed, and I'm about to be stretched again to be launched
Right.
somewhere else. I landed, and I'm in the process of being
Yeah.
pulled apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
I love
Yeah.
that. And then the last question, if there was one song from Hooke's Law that you had to show to someone that would describe the artist who you are right now the best, which one would it be?
Ooh. Mm. Oh my god. Ooh. Mm. I would say think about it, or I hate you. Can I pick two? That's two.
You
That's two.
can pick two. Yeah, you can, because we're
Okay.
multifaceted people. So yes, you can pick two.